Good morning, everyone. Just want to confirm with Chris that we have quorum. It looks like we do, but just want to confirm.
We can go through the agenda attendees list.
Yeah, I can do that if you like.
As you wish.
Councillor Brockington, here. Councillor Cloutier, here.
Good morning.
Councillor DeRuse, here. Councillor Eglite, here. Councillor Hubley, he sent regrets to me. Councillor King, I see you. And Councillor McKenney, I see you as well. And Councillor Vice Chair Menard. Good. All here but one. Perfect. Thank you all for joining us on this fine Zoom morning. It's actually, the weather's not very great, but it's great in here because we're all on Zoom. All right. So welcome to the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management for this Tuesday, October 20th, 2020. The year that keeps on giving. This is agenda 11 of this term of council. So declarations of interest. None? Does anyone have a declaration of interest against climate change? Like they would benefit from climate change action? Anyone that would benefit directly from climate change action? No one? Okay, declaration of interest, so there's none.
Isn't that everybody?
Well, then we're screwed. Then we're screwed. Then we've all had to declare interest and we can't actually hear this item.
We get to stay alive. That'll be great.
It seems to be a conflict of interest right there. So confirmation of minutes for the meeting of Tuesday, September 15th, 2020.
Carried.
Is that carried? I'm sure you all went through it with a fine tooth comb. Communications, response to inquiries, residential front yard gardens and expansion of community gardens. I believe that was Councillor Brockington, and clean water supply and private wells from Councillor King. So we've all received that. So that's good. So our first item on the agenda is from our advisory committee, Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee, which is the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee 2020 to 2022 work plan. Now, I don't believe, I was anticipating that perhaps we might have a representative from the advisory committee speak here today, but I don't believe we do.
I asked the chair and he was unable to attend.
No worries, no worries. So we'll simply just approve it so that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend that council approve the 2020 to 2022 Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee work plan as detailed in document 1. Is that item carried?
Carried. And Chair, if I may, if I could just say one quick word about this.
Yeah,
I just wanted to thank these members as well. I've been attending their meetings as vice chair of the committee, and just want to thank Chair Chris Nanda and all the members of this group who have dedicated their volunteer time to assisting our own work plan and advising us. So just wanted to big thank you to all those folks for putting together this work plan. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And item 2 on the agenda is the Climate Change Master Plan, Energy Evolution. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we have a motion to officially add this item.
Yes, that's right, Chair. So I can read through it. Whereas the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management, Agenda 11 was distributed to members and published to ottawa.ca on October 8th, and the report for this item was distributed and published on October 9th, 2020, after the technical briefing took place. Therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to subsection 89.3 of the procedure bylaw, the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management approve that the rules of procedure be suspended to allow for the consideration of the item listed as Climate Change Master Plan, Energy Evolution, Ottawa's Community Energy Transition Strategy final report.
All right, is that item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. So that is the agenda. So it is, this is obviously our main item.
Chair, if I may interrupt, there also a technical motion to correct one of the errors. Technically,
that's right. So just move that now then. That's good. Thanks.
Okay, just loading it up here. Okay, so this is just a technical amendment. Whereas this report presents the Energy Evolution, Ottawa's community energy transition strategy, including the energy and emissions modeling results, financial analysis, an overview of the 20 supporting projects, and a proposed spending plan for the 2019 Hydro Ottawa dividend surplus. And whereas the financial section of the executive summary contains a clerical error, therefore be it resolved that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend to council that the sentence, the financial analysis projects that in order to meet the 100% scenario, cumulative community-wide investment from 2020 to 2050 will total 52.6 billion with a present value of 29.7 billion. On page 8, be replaced with the financial analysis projects that in order to meet the 100% scenario, cumulative community-wide investment from 2020 to 2050 will total 57.4 billion with a present value of 31.8 billion. Important clarification.
Yeah, just a few billion off, so we're good. So on that motion, is that I'll just take care of that now because it's just a technical amendment. As long as So on the motion, carried.
Carried.
Thanks, and then we'll just do approved as amended by the end. Okay, so we're going to have a presentation on this. We have speakers as well. There's also been, if you should have been copied on some of the submissions from members of the public as well. So we have about over a dozen or so submissions that have been submitted to us that won't be speaking today, but they are important to look through and to read. So we'll go ahead with the presentation at this point. I know we had a pretty decent lengthy presentation on the 9th of October when we first introduced this at the technical briefing. So I've asked staff to kind of come back and do a bit of a briefer summary of that, but still covering the salient points of the report. And then we'll move to delegations and then to questions from members of committee. So I believe we have our Energy Evolution team and Jen Brown, I believe, is doing the presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, committee members. Next slide, please. So this morning, as the Chair mentioned, I'll be providing a shortened version of the presentation given during the technical briefing for Energy Evolution on October 9th. For those that were unable to attend the technical briefing and wish to hear the full presentation, please visit the City of Ottawa's YouTube webpage. So today's presentation will include a brief overview of the staff report recommendations, an overview of what's included in the Energy Evolution strategy, and reporting and next steps. Next slide, please. So today, staff are bringing forward the following report recommendations: that the Standing Committee recommend that Council receive the final report for Energy Evolution, Ottawa's Community Energy Transition Strategy, and supporting documents attached as Document 1 through Document 9 and summarized in this report. Receive the list of projects identified in Documents 7 and 8 to be more fully developed by staff and brought before Standing Committee and Council for approval where required. Direct staff leading new or updates to city plans, strategies, and policies to take into consideration the energy emissions model and the city's GHG reduction targets and the development of such plans, strategies, and policies. And approve that the 2019 Hydro Ottawa dividend surplus of 2.6 million be used to fund the proposed spending plan attached as Document 11 and summarized in this report. Next slide. So Energy Evolution is the community's energy transition strategy, and it sets the framework for how we will achieve Ottawa's greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. This list is a high-level overview of what is included in the final strategy. At the core of Energy Evolution is an energy and emissions model and financial analysis that projects the scale and scope of action and investment required to achieve the city's long-term target to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 100% by 2050, or what staff refer to in the strategy as the 100% scenario. Based on the model, 20 community and municipal projects have been identified to accelerate action and investment within the next 5 years. The strategy also identifies the potential risks to their implementation and how these risks will be mitigated. Additionally, the staff report addresses COVID-19 considerations and includes a proposed spending plan for the Hydro Ottawa dividend surplus to advance these projects. Next slide. To achieve the 100% scenario, actions are required in 5 sectors: land use and growth management, buildings, transportation, waste and renewable natural gas, and electricity. 4 of the 5 sectors are represented here. Land use is embedded throughout. Based on the model, the buildings and transportation sectors are projected to account for roughly 75% of greenhouse gas reductions in 2050. The remaining 25% is projected to come from the waste and renewable natural gas and electricity sectors. Next slide. A total of 39 actions were modeled, of which these 5 actions rose to the top as having the most significant cumulative greenhouse gas emission reduction potential to achieving the 100% scenario. The top 5 actions are to electrify personal vehicles, retrofit residential and commercial buildings, divert organics from the landfill and use as organic material to create renewable natural gas, and transition to zero-emission commercial fleets. Collectively, these 5 actions combine for roughly 80% of projected cumulative greenhouse gas emission reductions required. Next slide. The next 2 slides identify the 20 projects to be undertaken over the next 5 years. Most of these projects are to be led by the municipality and are to be undertaken in collaboration with community partners. Within land use, staff will integrate energy and climate mitigation priorities into the new official plan and supporting master plans. Within buildings, staff will undertake projects that accelerate and finance energy efficiency retrofits in residential and commercial buildings, addresses infrastructure and utility requirements for new ways of heating buildings, improve building design and construction through the introduction of a high-performance building standard, or development standard, and improve building energy performance in municipally owned buildings. Next slide. Within transportation, staff will undertake projects that encourage personal electric vehicles and zero-emission vehicles for the commercial, municipal, and transit fleets. And it will also undertake projects that shift personal vehicle trips to more cycling, walking, and transit trips. If we switch to the waste and renewable natural gas sector, staff will undertake projects that divert organic waste from landfill to reduce the emissions from managing waste, as well as explore creation of renewable natural gas. Next slide. And within electricity, staff will undertake a strategy to develop local or regional renewable electricity supplies and to advance zero-emission generation at the provincial level. Staff will also be exploring projects that enable greenhouse gas emission reductions, such as coordinating communications with senior levels of government, utilities, stakeholders, the broader community, and other Ontario Canadian municipalities, engage residents, businesses, and organizations to champion and take collective action to meet the targets, and also to further assess potential sources of municipal funding to fund the aforementioned projects. Next slide. A community-wide financial analysis was undertaken to analyze actions that have financial impacts. The financial information presented in the strategy represents high-level or Class D estimates that are currently uncommitted and unfunded capital and operational needs. The municipality alone will not accomplish the scale of investment required. The financial analysis indicates that cumulative community-wide investments from 2020 to 2050 total $57.4 billion. If investments were made to reach the 2050 target, the net return community-wide total would be $87.7 billion over the life of the assets. Next slide. There is a net financial benefit to society starting in 2032, when the net annual savings and revenues exceed the annual investments. In the short term, annual community-wide capital costs are higher, as upfront investments in buildings, vehicles, energy-related equipment, and renewables are made that will lead to long-term savings. Annual incremental community-wide investments of approximately $1.6 billion per year would be required over the next 10 years to achieve emission reductions in line with the model. The top 5 areas for incremental investment over the next 10 years includes expanding and transitioning the transit fleet to zero emission at $513 million per year, retrofitting existing homes at $250 million, building better buildings at $296 million, wind energy at $147 million, and heat pumps at $122 million. From 2032 onwards, net returns are projected to be higher, primarily because of the saved energy costs and earned revenues from local energy production, generation. Next slide. Staff are also recommending that committee and council approve a proposed spending plan for the 2.6 million Hydro Ottawa dividend surplus. The spending plan will be used to support energy evolution priority projects, leverage federal and provincial funds where possible, and implement energy efficiency, conservation, and renewable energy generation projects. Projects include, but are not limited to, municipal building energy conservation, efficiency, and fuel switching projects, staffing to support progress in electrification of vehicles, including working to upgrade and install new charging infrastructure, energy projects at the wastewater treatment facility, and communication, education, and engagement programs that support energy evolution objectives. Next slide. A number of risks have been identified that could impede the success of energy evolution. These risks range from insufficient financial support to regulatory barriers and compliance issues, to competing priorities and aggressive timelines, as well as changes in behavior, policy, and best practices related to COVID-19. Next slide. To mitigate these risks, the Energy Evolution Project team will continue to work with staff and community partners to build out energy evolution projects. Information and recommendations to support project implementation will be shared with the Tiger team, comprised of the city's senior leadership team, the Climate Change Council Sponsors Group, the Environmental Stewardship Advisory Committee, a community-wide governance structure, and community partners to align and coordinate priorities, work plans, budgets, communications, and advocacy efforts. Additionally, the Energy Evolution Project team will continue to work with our municipal colleagues across the country to share information, best practices, and lessons learned. Next slide. Staff intend to bring forward an annual status update on the energy evolution projects and any recommendations to advance those projects as part of the Climate Change Master Plan annual updates. Staff also intend to rerun the energy and emissions model in 5 years' time to assess how the city and the community are tracking towards achieving the 100% scenario and to determine what actions should be prioritized. A full review and update of the Climate Change Master Plan will be completed in 2025. Next slide. Following receipt of the strategy by committee and council, staff will continue to develop all 20 projects with input from staff, stakeholders, and the public as required, develop a 10-year spending plan that can feed into municipal budget processes and feed into the city's long-range financial plans, continue to advocate for funding and policy changes at senior levels of government, build out the climate lens and governance frameworks in order to embed climate considerations across all city and community business, and finally, staff will prepare department-specific presentations on energy evolution starting in 2021 to support ongoing alignment of priorities, work plans, and budgets. Next slide. I would like to close this morning by taking this opportunity to recognize and extend our sincere thanks and appreciation to our project's partners and consultants who provided technical expertise, support, and leadership throughout the development of energy evolution. And I say sincerely, without them, the project would not have been possible. Next slide. That concludes my presentation for this morning, and I will now hand it back over to the chair.
Thank you very much, Jen. Appreciate that presentation. And thanks as well to yourself and to the team for all the work that you've done to get us to this point. And I know it's been 4 years and a lot of dedication and commitment on behalf of you and your team, Andrew Flowers, and the whole group over there. So we're going to move to delegations. I will first thank those who submitted comments as well of support. We have them from an array of groups, noted groups in the area, including, Marco Pagani provided something from the Ottawa Community Foundation. We have correspondence of support from Hydro One, Hydro Ottawa, the Canada Green Building Council, the Ottawa Board of Trade. We also had a letter, so we have to get windmill development and Enbridge, but we also had a letter just this morning from the Treasury Board, which to me is pretty much a blank check for $50 billion. I mean, it doesn't say it, but if you read between the lines, you see it, it's there. Like the $50 billion is there. It's just a matter of us, crossing some T's and dotting some I's. It's in the letter. I'm sure Nick Zenos knew that when he wrote it to us. So we'll move right to our delegations. And our first one is Rob Barnes with Ecology Ottawa.
Good morning, Chair and Committee. Nice to see you this morning. Thanks for your time today. And I just want to start my quick presentation by giving a hats off to the team at the city for working so hard on this. As the chair mentioned, this has been years in the making and is obviously a product of a lot of work and a lot of detail. And so we're really excited about the level of detail here, especially with regards to the long-term savings, which Jen just covered in her presentation. I think that's a really important consideration. With climate change, as we know, the costs of inaction are always dwarfed, or basically the costs of action are always dwarfed by the long-term costs of inaction. And in this case too, there's this benefit that you can see where the city will reap billions and the community will reap billions if it makes the right investments up front. So that's really encouraging. I just want to point out a few issues with the document as well, just so that the committee understands that we can take this with a certain grain of salt, especially the modeling. I think that obviously it's really important, it's really complex. And our hope is that future iterations of the model will capture some of these important details that I'll mention. One is that there are gaps with regard to land use in the model and in the strategy. We can see, for example, that the authors recommend integration of energy and climate mitigation policies into the new official plan and supporting master plans, but there's no policy detail in this area. Obviously, that's for council to sort out, right? And so we're encouraging council to be bold with the new official plan and related master plans to ensure that climate is as strong as possible and that intensification targets are strong, because our land use policy is our transportation policy, is our climate policy. Those things are so tightly interconnected and we can't forget about that. Second, I would just also point out the lack of analysis on what's called embodied carbon, which is the carbon that goes into making things like new developments, new highways, new buildings. This is common, this isn't the model is world-class, as I've been told by the staff, but even world-class models have their gaps. And an analysis by Clean Energy Canada writes of one instance where they did an analysis on a UK highway widening project where 76% of the project's total carbon footprint resulted from embodied carbon. So it's our hope that future analyses, when they rerun the model, will take this into account, because I think it'll be a really important factor as council considers which projects should go ahead and tries to use that climate lens. If the climate lens is missing something so critical, we might come to the wrong decisions collectively. Third, I would just caution again, for those of us who've gone through the document, a lot of the policy recommendations hinge on things outside of council's control. Obviously, cities only control so much in terms of jurisdictional power. But when we're talking about a rapid uptake in, for example, electric vehicles, we understand that council only has limited power. I would encourage council to do all that it can, and also to leverage the advocacy function and ask the provincial and federal governments to come to the table to fund some of these important investments. The takeaway is, so we've got some issues with the plan, but it's the only plan we have, and it's a very detailed plan and a very fleshed out plan. So let's not make the perfect the enemy of the good. Let's start implementing as soon as possible. As we know, the targets are highly ambitious, and this will require an all hands on deck approach. So we need to stop having moments like we did this summer where we were worried about whether or not $2.6 million would be clawed back from the climate team, and start thinking comprehensively and holistically about how we insert this systematically in every budget going forward, and how we take out of the budget some of these things like costly road widening projects that do long-term damage to our ability to mitigate climate action. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, an ambitious official plan is so critical. So we urge council beyond this committee to consider that, and to understand that climate dimensions are so critical when it comes to land use planning. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you so much, Rob. Appreciate that. Just look to see if there's any questions for you from, yes, Councillor King.
Thanks, Rob, for your response. I just had one quick question in terms of embodied carbon. Are there any specific models or calculators that you would suggest based on your research that the city should actually utilize to make those calculations?
I don't have anything off the top of my head. And again, Councillor King, in our discussions with the city staff, it's our understanding that the SSG model is best in class. So as I said, even these great models lack this element. I can do further research and follow up, though. I'd be very happy to do research. I know groups like Clean Energy Canada and some academic experts, University of Ottawa and elsewhere, have done that kind of deep dive analysis on which models have which elements, and I would be happy to bring that back to the climate team as well as to your office.
That'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks, Rob, for your presentation. I'm curious to know your opinion, your view on the 20 projects that have been selected, the 20 different projects that are in there. Are there any? Are we missing some that you think should be in there? Are these the right priorities that we've got now that are in this plan? Do you have some feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think based on the analysis that's provided, I think they're solid. And you know, in Ecology Ottawa's response to the climate team, we mentioned as much. I mean, I think that they're comprehensive. They cover a wide range of aspects. You know, cover all of the points of our emissions, our community emissions. And so I think we're focusing on a lot of the right areas. As I said in the presentation, I think there's a missing detail on some of the ones, especially the ones that are you know, beyond the control of this committee, which is always a problem, right? With siloed action at the city level. And so it's really important that we incorporate a level of detail and analysis in our land use planning and our transportation planning that really understands that. But given the analysis and given the limitations of the model, I understand the model wasn't meant to solve all the problems, right? The model is delineating a certain path to get there. There's a strong logic there, and I think that, you know, the uptake of EVs, for example, will be so critical. The electrification of the transportation and public transportation will be extremely costly, but as we said, it's an investment that's tremendously worthwhile.
Yeah, I think that the next 5 years, you know, that's what these 20 projects are targeting. This is a long-term plan of 2050, but those 20 projects are really the next 5 years. So that's what we see kind of in the immediacy. So yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks for being here as always.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I think with, you know, when you look at some of the outside impacts, right? I mean, I mentioned it during the technical briefing, but the federal government, the provincial government investing in Ford Canada and their operations in Oakville to expand their production of electric vehicles, and what that means and what that'll contribute to the market to make it more, you know, more likely that these things increase on the market. And then there's the charging aspect. I know one of the submissions we got was sort of suggesting that, well, in order to encourage that, the city needs to put in more electric vehicle charging stations. But it's not just the city. There's a private sector component to that too. The city doesn't own any gas stations in the city of Ottawa. Yet cars have no problem getting around and getting gas. So it's not all on the city to go out there and start installing chargers everywhere. I know, I think one of the first Petro-Canadas that I saw with a charging station was in Napanee. I know the one in Brockville has one now. That's starting, the supercharging station. So that's coming along, and the Tesla charging stations in Kingston, they're everywhere. So there's a lot of private sector input to this too that we need to start seeing as well across the province to help with that and to provide that ability to charge easily. The city has some, we know we're doing some more, but certainly it's not us alone. So thank you, Rob, appreciate your input this morning.
Thanks for your time today.
So our next speaker is Dick Bacher from Ottawa Renewable Energy Cooperative. Oh, Dick, I'll just ask you to unmute yourself there. And here you go.
Is that better?
It's perfect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for letting us speak today. Are the slides ready? I would like to speak about community ownership, not just private and not just municipal. At the start of this session, the chair mentioned or asked people if anyone was going to benefit from climate change or climate action. There are many people who see themselves as wanting to invest and potentially benefiting from serious climate action. And I represent 1,000 people who have invested their money in such action. Can I have the OREC slides, please?
They are up. You're ready to go.
I'm seeing Ottawa Community Foundation.
Oh, sorry. You're right. Correct.
Good people, but not us. Thank you.
We're working to fix that.
Okay. Basically, I won't be getting into too much background. There'll be a number of slides, five or six slides, each with a picture of a project that OREC has financed through our membership. We're a relatively new model for Canada, but proven model in Europe and parts of the US, Northern Europe and parts of the US. There's over 700 renewable energy cooperatives in Germany, and the largest in the world is in Belgium with over 50,000 members and millions of dollars of operating renewable assets owned by those members. There we are. Okay. So next slide, please. So community-owned solar or community-owned renewable or community-owned energy retrofits are a proven way to bring new capital to bear to climate action. There's an urgent need to act now. You've set very serious 5-year targets. 5 years is only 4 years away. We're into the first year already. How are you going to mobilize enough capital to make those investments broadly and with support from the public? It's our view, and we've proven through what we've done over the last 10 years, that there's a lot of money sitting in people's wallets, in people's bank accounts that are looking for projects. This project is the Maurice Lapointe High School in Southern Canada, owned by the French Catholic School Board. The asset on the roof is owned by OREC. Next slide. OREC was founded 10 years ago to enable members, our members, to own and finance community-owned renewable generation in their community. We now have over 780 residents of Ottawa and Eastern Ontario as members of OREC. Those members have invested all of the money that we put to bear in our 21 projects. There are 19 operating now and 2 in the final stages of construction at this moment. They should be finished by the end of this month if our friends at Hydro Ottawa can connect it quickly. We are also partnered with our sister cooperative called CoEnergy, which does energy retrofits, which is another key part of your plans. The OREC projects are on a plethora of school board sites, one federal Crown Corp, affordable housing providers, local businesses, and some farms. Next slide. That site that you see is in Pressland in the Vanier Saint Laurent area. What we're proposing is a zero capital cost opportunity for the city. The picture you're seeing there now is the Museum of Science and Technology. It's a site that we finished construction on in July of 2019. It's been operating for over a year now. There was no capital expenditure by the museum. They approved the project as an operating expense. So we're delivering electricity to the building on a 30-year contract with predictable costs and effective and driving down their costs, but they have a predictable cost structure for their electricity for the next 30 years. We're also driving down the peak demand in that neighborhood. So the Saint Laurent area is a grid constrained area. There's not enough lines and generation in the area. They're looking at upgrading that. So by having solar generating power during peak demand, we're reducing that pressure on the local grid, which is good for all the ratepayers in the city. So that site has been financed completely by OREC, by our members, and the museum is simply paying an operational cost to purchase the power from us. Next slide. The energy evolution has a very serious, action-oriented, long-term and short-term plan. One of the key objectives is to have 150 megawatts of new distributed solar available within the city boundaries. This is going to require a lot of political capital from city council, from the city bureaucracy, to find new ways to collaborate with players in the community and find ways to create action sooner than later. There are, as somebody mentioned earlier, there's lots of silos, there's lots of ways to defer, delay, and avoid action. You're going to have to find partners that are ready and able to build and implement with public support quickly. We think OREC is in a unique position to help the city in moving forward. Next slide. So we've taken the liberty to look at some of your sites and sketch what a OREC site would look like. This is the Stittsville Cardell Rec Center. It's just down the road from the Pierre Desmarais School that we're building solar on right now in Stittsville. Stittsville is also a grid constrained area. There's a serious problem with the power lines in that area, and the ratepayers are faced with a significant cost upgrade or cost increase to expand the grid and new transmission stations in the area. It would be good for all of us, all the ratepayers and taxpayers, if there was less new power lines required in that area. Putting this solar system in place would reduce that pressure and would enable power to be generated on site, especially during the peak summer months, without incremental new costs. OREC would love to finance that site. Next slide. Also in the Saint Laurent area, the bus station would be an ideal location. That again is across the street from our Museum of Science and Technology facility, and also would address the grid constraints of that neighborhood. There's a lot of new expansion that's happening in that area. So those two sites, should the city find a way to proceed with us, we could have them both installed by next year if we are able to work together on such an initiative. There are other sites as well, but we thought we'd present two sites that were straightforward. We'd love to do something on the train lines, on the new LRT system. The maintenance facility would be ideal, but there are other issues that are probably delaying any change of scope on that contract. But that would be another ideal opportunity. It has a fairly good slope on the roof line there. Next slide. So I want it to be brief so there'd be lots of time for questions.
All right, thank you so much. I do see a question from Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Becker. I get very excited when I see a presentation like that with the possibilities. It just sort of brings it down to reality of what we can do. We've had conversations about the LRT stations for stage 2, about possibility of doing that. And I've asked staff about it and they're still looking into it. What is, you were talking about silos. What is it that stops these things from coming into fruition? Government layers, there's always silos. We know that at the municipal level very much, but from your experience, how can we break them down?
There are, in the solar world, there are building issues and owners. There's change of use of buildings. There's the location of where equipment is put on the roof. So all those things are little things that are set to cause delays. There's the timing of our winter and summer, spring and fall. You can't build in winter here. There's heavy rain in the spring and late fall. So that constrains the construction period. There's the interconnection with the hydro company. When we build a net metering project for self-consumption on the building, we still have to connect to the grid because the grid is effectively a backup, is the battery. So all of those things have to be timed together. And to be fair to our friends at Hydro Ottawa, they are in a changing world. The electricity system has really not changed dramatically since it was started 100 years ago. It has gotten bigger and faster and there's more power being delivered. But the idea of a centralized monopolistic power grid from big power sources distributed to millions of small consumers, that model has not changed. And it's changing slower in Ontario than it is in many other jurisdictions around the world. New York, New England are moving much faster than Ontario and Quebec because we still are thinking of small, remote, big power facilities, centralized facilities, distributing power in one direction down very long lines. And the pension funds and the big investors are looking at the government to backstop all their investments. So Ontario has 60% of its power coming from 3 nuclear sites in the province. That's a very unflexible system. Northern Europe, Belgium, and Germany, Denmark and Germany are much more distributed, much more decentralized for a whole bunch of political and cultural reasons. But we will go that way, we must go that way, and the hydro companies are slowly moving that direction. So that's as short an answer as I can give on that point. But it is key, and it's a very hard thing to explain to people.
Okay, so we need to work with Hydro Ottawa
Absolutely.
to convince them more that this is the future that we need for climate change.
And your building managers, your property
managers. Well, I'd like to see more, and I hope that we'll be looking at more and have the opportunity to work with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see any more questions, so appreciate your submission today, and I believe we got an email submission from your group as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Moving on, we have from the Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association, Jason Burgraff.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the time to speak before the committee today. Our submission goes into detail on a lot of items, and I just want to reinforce a few points here this morning. Energy Evolution identifies a number of actions and strategies that involve or are related to residential construction and renovation. GOBA urges that whenever considering action in this area, especially as these various proposed programs become more concrete, that housing affordability continues to be a priority along with environmental objectives. The top 3 actions identified in the modeling as having the largest cumulative impact on greenhouse gas reductions on all impact housing, whether it's electrifying personal vehicles, retrofitting residential buildings, or diverting organics and using renewable natural gas. We're supportive of the Energy Evolution initiative overall and appreciate that the modeling is needed to sketch out a path forward to achieving the reduction objectives, with the understanding, of course, that we hold concerns about specific actions and strategies like the high performance development standard as outlined in our submission, which we expect to address with staff and other stakeholders as programs are developed. There's not enough appreciation of the energy efficiency of a home built today, even just to building code standards alone, nor that residential energy performance is constantly improving through better design and innovative products. Improving energy performance becomes exponentially more expensive the better the housing gets. And that really leads me to the item I want you to take away from today, and that's the need to properly support the Residential Retrofit Accelerator Program. It's one of the programs within the modeling. I expect that the high performance development standard to receive a lot of staff effort and resourcing, but it's only modeled to account for 6% of greenhouse gas reductions. Retrofitting existing buildings, meanwhile, is modeled to have 3 times as much impact. We build approximately 7,500 homes a year, of which a portion is going to fall under the high performance development standard. There are over 400,000 existing homes across Ottawa. The biggest opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve energy performance in the housing sector is to renovate existing homes. Our resources and our efforts should focus on the energy evolution projects that will yield us the biggest results. And that's really the biggest point I want to make today. So I won't take up any more time at this point, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And I know you did provide a very detailed submission as well, which I was reading through just last night, actually. So thank you for doing that. I know we all have that with us. Do we have any questions for Jason and Goba? I don't see any. I think your points on this came up, the notion of housing affordability. It came up in our discussions at the Planning Advisory Committee as well, when we discussed this and other things with our members of the Planning Advisory Committee. And I think one of the things I try to reiterate is it's not just that upfront housing cost, it's also that long-term cost of owning a house, right? And what that operating cost would be, and if there's ways to maybe you might spend a bit now, but your long-term investment, your long-term ongoing, your mortgage might take up a bit more, but your housing costs, your heating and energy costs will be a little bit less, and it'll be that offset. I mean, at least that's the idea. That's the general idea, and that's where you see in this thing, especially from some of your larger, commercial properties, as to where you would benefit from city-owned facilities. But certainly with that retrofit program as well is one of the key things, because we do know that existing housing is inferior to new housing when it comes to energy benefits. So thank you again for your comments. I don't see any questions for you, so we'll let you go, but I appreciate you coming today and providing your comments.
Thanks for the time.
Thank you. So our next speaker is the Executive Director of the Ottawa Climate Action Fund. So he's likely bringing money. I mean, this is like, he's only here to say, I've got money for you, just spend it free will. Steve Winkleman.
What did you need? 56 billion?
Yeah, give or take. I mean, it's up to you. 57 would be better, but I mean, if 56 is all you have, I can find the billion elsewhere.
Fair enough. Chair Moffat, committee members, good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to present. My name is Steve Winkleman. I'm the incoming Executive Director of OCAF, the Ottawa Climate Action Fund, which is being incubated by the Ottawa Community Foundation. We see adoption of the Energy Evolution Strategy as a critical step toward implementation of actions that will protect our environment and economy in the coming decades. Implementation of Energy Evolution will enhance sustainable economic opportunities for Ottawa businesses and create a net positive return for the whole community. It ably reflects the latest scientific and economic assessments that point to the high opportunity costs of delayed climate action. We cannot afford to wait. The Ottawa Community Foundation, in addition to granting to local charities, has been a national leader in impact investing and has a keen interest in establishing new backbone organizations to help drive positive, systemic, and sustainable change in our community, which is why in early 2021, we'll be launching OCAF with a mandate to unlock scalable climate solutions for Ottawa. Next slide, please. OCAF is part of a national network of 7 LC3 centers, low carbon Canadian cities, with a 20 million, not billion, I'm sorry, endowment from the federal government granted through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. The GHG reduction targets that you set in January will require collaboration across many sectors, as is well explained in the strategy. The Ottawa Community Foundation is willing and ready to play a role in that collaborative approach. In May, we signed an MOU with the city, committing to work together to accelerate greenhouse gas reductions. In the coming weeks, Councillor Moffat, we'll be formally inviting you to serve on our OCAF Advisory Committee. I hope you'll join us. Next slide. The deep analysis and extensive stakeholder engagement that went into Energy Evolution is a stellar example of the significant climate change work already underway in Ottawa. And we know that Energy Evolution goals will require more effort, more investment, and more coordination to catalyze the rapid change and deep transformation necessary to realize broad communal dividends. We need better alignment between public and private and civil society actions. This is why OCAF is being created, to align potential. Our mission is to scale impactful low carbon solutions to their full potential in Ottawa. We're here to help align carbon reduction with community benefit by enhancing collaborative capacity and cultivating investment opportunities. Next slide. What we build, where and how determines whether we will thrive or suffer in the face of climate change. We must ask the climate question of public and private actions, projects, plans, policies, investments. Do they make it better or worse? Do they increase emissions or decrease them? Do they enhance resilience or increase vulnerability? And do they advance social inclusion or exacerbate inequities? We must answer the climate question by collectively creating the conditions where public and private spending is steered toward and attracted to low carbon, resilient, and equitable solutions. Next slide. OCAF will help stimulate scale up of win-win solutions for businesses and the community through grants, investments, capacity building, communications, and advocacy. We will support the private sector in developing and financing impactful projects that inform and inspire replication. We'll partner with and support NGOs and civil society to advance strategic initiatives to overcome barriers to scale up. And we'll share Ottawa's successes with and leverage best practices from our partners in the national LC3 network. Next slide. OCAF's key focus areas align well with energy evolution priorities: building retrofits, smart intensification, transportation, all aimed at scaling up effective low-carbon solutions. We'll pursue opportunities to answer the climate question and align climate solutions, such as linking building energy efficiency with travel efficiency in walkable 15-minute communities. My final slide.
1 minute.
Smart approaches to achieving Ottawa's aggressive and essential greenhouse gas reduction goals that are designed to also solve for employment, mobility, equity, affordability, and environmental quality dovetail with the Ottawa Community Foundation's aspiration to contribute to making Ottawa all it can be. OCAF looks forward to partnering with you to help bring energy evolution from an impressive plan to impactful actions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate that submission and look forward to the invite for the advisory committee. So do we have any questions for Mr. Winkleman? Seeing none, very much appreciate your attendance here and your submission. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, so we now move on to Angela Keller-Herzog with the Community Associations for Environmental Sustainability.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly well.
Excellent, excellent. So good morning to you, Chair and councillors. Congratulations, first of all, to seeing this strategy home. I think it's been a long road, and nobody will be able to claim that Ottawa has not done its homework. Several thousand pages of analysis and reports, 6 years spanning 2 terms of council. So I have for you several messages from cafes, community associations for environmental sustainability. Actually, 4 messages. 1, implement. It's great to have a well-considered strategy, a good plan. So now that we have that, now is the time to implement. Now is the time to turn the corner on that emissions graph. And councillors, I think this is your steering wheel to turn. 2, urgency. A friend of mine pointed out to me that we expect emergency vehicles to move a lot faster than the regular flow of traffic. You, the council, have declared a climate emergency. So now we expect you to drive this emergency vehicle much faster than the regular flow of business at City Hall. And councillors, this is your pedal to step on. And there are projects under the control of the municipalities, and we do have regulatory instruments on the table. 3, money. And I'll unpack this a bit more because I think we are also in the pre-budget period. We would like to see assurance that city staff will make strong efforts, best efforts, to leverage funding from all available sources to fund energy evolution. This is our ask, and I can unpack that a little bit. No money should be left lying on the table at FCM, as for example was the case for the e-buses, or perhaps still is, or at federal ministries that are trying to fund green infrastructure. No proposals to other funding facilities should be left unwritten. There are international sources, philanthropists, and not forgetting our own community investors, such as the OREX and the OCAF that we just heard from. We look forward to climate action funded in budget 2021. And I think that you need to get the climate funding off the unpredictable surplus hydro dividend and onto the city budget itself. C, we look forward to a long-range financial plan for making the capital investments that energy evolution calls for. D, we look forward to the city devising a financial vehicle for climate project finance, for climate capital investments, and one that can help residents and businesses with energy retrofits, taking advantage of the current very low rates of interest, blending lending with grants, and intermediating climate finance to the benefit of all Ottawans. And E, We look forward to the city not only divesting the endowment fund from fossil fuels, but to divest it from markets and bring it home, to invest it locally in renewable energy and other investments that have a positive return, as the presentation from Jennifer showed us, and also less risk than today's stock markets. Fourth and last, cafes would ask for your leadership and attention to make sure that this long-range plan to 2050, this plan to move Ottawa onto a low-carbon development path, will receive policy support in the new official plan. We need your leadership to ensure that the city does not invest in fossil fuel infrastructure henceforth, but switches to a low-carbon path and avoids climate risk. This requires a carbon lens and an equity lens at the same time. And we need to do this at every level, from the official plan right down to our procurement policies. So let's do it for the kids, future generations of Ottawa residents that we hope will thrive here at the intersection of three rivers. We're on this journey together. Cafes can very much help to engage the public, the community associations, and the residents, and we're happy to offer you our partnership in getting on this path. So thank you for your leadership and for your good work.
And thank you for your contributions and submissions over the years. And I know you've been right there with us the entire time, and we appreciate that. Councillor Eglai.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, just a comment. At the beginning of the presentation, you were making a lot of analogy to emergency vehicles and us being behind the wheel, and I'm assuming that was all in electric vehicles, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
Just clarifying. And I want to pick up on your last point, though. Your offer for cafes to assist the city. I'm wondering if you could flesh that out a little bit. How do you see cafes assisting on the moving energy evolution forward? What concrete things or what proposals do you have that staff could look at and say, yeah, no, this may work, and this would be a good initiative or good partnership?
All right, so the way that I try to organize my thoughts often is to say, well, we need practical actions and we need strategic actions, right? So at the practical level, what we are working on is a strategy where we would be engaging with the community associations and citizens associations and offer to familiarize and present to them what the city has been cooking up. Because, I mean, with respect, to read through the thousands of pages of supporting documents in energy evolution, there's very few people that have achieved this feat and are now standing on top of that mountain of paper, looking into the bright future. So we would be in a position to represent, familiarize, communicate some of this good work. We're currently working actually on a proposal to Environment and Climate Change Canada, because as you know, there's federal money on the table. We'll see whether we can get their support to run what sounds like a zillion workshops in all these different neighborhoods where we have connections to community associations. And we would then partner also with the city and the city staff to do this. So some of that public engagement and communications work we can roll out into neighborhoods. At a more strategic level, we like to think that we monitor and keep an eye on what is happening, the pace at which happening. When there's delays, we try to wave our hands and say, hey, you were supposed to quote table this at Q4 and we're not seeing it. Where is it, please? To hopefully keep things on track and keep the whole climate change master plan integrated also with the other master plans. There's a lot of complicated sideways work. And then lastly, in terms of the, I don't know if you want to call budget stuff strategic, but it's certainly an important piece, as I'm sure all of you councillors are very aware.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Chair, and for being here, Angela, and great work as always. We are going to need you and your help in rolling this out, and particularly around the ambassador network. That is one of the key projects, one of the 20 projects under Energy Evolution, and I see cafes as a major component of that. I am curious, and this is where I'm most seized with those 20 projects, because it's the actual action we're going to see moving forward in the next few years. It's not going to be 20 years out. This is the here and now. So I am wondering what folks' views of those projects are, and what you see as if there's anything missing in those projects, if you'd like to see something added or promoted. There are those projects there under Energy Evolution. That's our next step, and that's what I most want to focus on in the next little while. So getting those funded, getting those actioned. Do you have any comments on that?
Absolutely. So first of all, I mean, it's pretty huge, the changes. So breaking the findings of the model and the analysis down into 20 pieces makes it a bit more manageable. So to some extent, what's called a project in some cases is really like a subsector strategy. What I'm a little bit afraid of in terms of these projects is that okay, so now we have broken it up into 20 pieces. So now what, we're going to take 2 years to develop a strategy for 1/20th of the piece. And after that, it'll come back again to committee and break it down into 20 little further pieces. And then we're going to run out of time, right? I mean, we'll be in the third term of council without seeing implementation. So that's a little bit of a fear. So I would urge that once there's a decent plan for a project, you then delegate it. You then say, okay, get this show on the road. We want this to happen. Make it so, right? And rather than keep this like hamster wheel of breaking it further down and asking for more detail and having another year of delay. So I think, yes, I support the 20 projects, but let's get on with it. In terms of your question on what's missing, I mean, we've done very earnest work, and not just me, but I've had input from lots of members, and we've sent very detailed comments in August to the team. Let me just point out two things that aren't really there. And one is this concept of having a financial vehicle. I think that, again, if we break everything into small financial pieces, what we miss is the opportunity for Ottawa to do to use the municipal leverage that we have to do capital project financing. So our proposal, and we'd like to have a conversation with somebody at Treasury, maybe the innovative person who put themselves behind the green bond issuance that we did for the LRT, to form a capital corporation or a municipal finance authority that can then bring together and blend the bonds and the lending with the grants, and then intermediate and make this available to businesses and residents and finance and do project finance. So for example, the harvesting of the gas at ROPEC, right? Some of those projects are big, so we need project finance for that. So that whole finance area and bringing it together into a vehicle, I think, is missing. There has been a little bit of talk about a revolving fund behind the scenes. The other thing that I think is really an underutilized regulatory tool is the whole use of community improvement plans. I think that as an economist, I look at incentives and disincentives pretty much as flip side, but the same kind of thing. So sure, the municipality can't levy a carbon tax. We don't have that ability, but the community can very much link a rebate to, for example, energy efficient buildings. So if we had a community improvement plan that provided incentives and set us a bar rewarding building owners for having highly energy efficient buildings, that could be huge. So I think that that's something that could be looked at. And obviously the city is ideally placed to make that intervention. Because if you're sitting at the Infrastructure Bank of Canada and you have a huge bag of money, well, how exactly are you going to reach a particular homeowner or commercial building owner? The city is in that crucial place to, again, make that intermediation. And I think that there are regulatory tools like the community improvement stuff that are underutilized in energy evolution proposals.
Okay, thank you very much for that that detailed answer. I think that's helpful, particularly, you know, either revolving fund or some type of where you see savings from what you're starting with in terms of building retrofits or lighting changes, et cetera, and roll those back into more investments. I think that makes a lot of sense. I'll have a notice of motion later today that does speak as well to some of those pieces. So thanks for that.
All right, thank you. Thank you. I've never been sitting at anywhere with a big bag of money. A sock full of pennies, but that's a story for a whole other day that I don't want to get into. So thank you, Angela, for your contribution today and previous contributions and future contributions. So we move on to our final speaker for this morning, which is Colleen Glass.
Good.
There she is.
Good. Good morning. Thank you very much. To meet you all and to congratulate you, as other speakers have done, on the good work that's been done and the leadership that you've provided in the community. I represent, I represent a small committee at the First Unitarian Congregation that's looking at Earth and what's happening on the Earth, Environmental Action Working Group. I also wanted to acknowledge that we are on the unceded territory of the Algonquin people, and we have a responsibility not only to ourselves in this generation, but to coming generations, but we all know this. What I would like to offer is to echo, just as what Angela was speaking about, the need for nimble, delegated projects. I was fortunate enough this last week to attend the Economist had an interview conference. World Finance people got together. Mark Carney was the opening speaker. What they spoke about was the importance right now of having nimble teams of people to action, to write, for reporting to be crisp, for authorities to be delegated. We know what needs to be done. I encourage implementation at that level. They also spoke about, what we all know is that climate risk is financial risk. So that beautiful graph that you showed, what happens in 2032, could add to the bag of pennies, Scott, that you're talking about for the city. I'm just an individual taxpayer in Bay Ward, very proud of the work that you've done to protect the Bay coming into Andrew Hayden and along the Cross Canada Trail. Excellent work pulling the sand out of Britannia Bay Beach. Another mitigation that had to be done as an impact from climate emergency. But our little group of people is working at the First Unitarian to raise awareness of these issues. We've focused 4 years of our congregational life to address climate emergency and how we as a small community in the West End can work with our neighbors to, again, increase resiliency. And I guess the last thing I wanted to say that this plan is bold, it's good, please run with it. You're providing leadership, and our committee is very proud of the work you've all done. So thank you. No questions, please.
Well, I can't guarantee no questions. You said Bay Ward and you triggered your counselor. So
okay, all right. Sorry, I'm no expert. You are impressive, all of you. The work you're doing is amazing. Run with that ball. You know, the community's behind you. Oh, the other thing they said, oh, this is great. Integrated thinking. seriously, these were people from Europe, everywhere. They were there in Zoom talking about integrated thinking. So health, social housing, climate, transportation. And that's what you've pulled together in the plan. So keep running with that ball. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Ms. Glass. Don't worry, I'm not going to torture you with questions. I want to give you a thank you because you're sort of like the perfect Margaret Mead quote of, never underestimate what a small group of like-minded citizens can do together, because that's the only way change happens. It takes groups of people, small groups of people in a community to make change. And I think you're a very, very good example. The Unitarian Church has done a lot of good work on that. I want to commend them, and please continue to talk to us about your ideas. And my door's open to listen, because that's where the best ideas come from, frankly. And we have to continue to listen. I don't think we'd be here today having these conversations if like-minded people like yourself did not come forward. So I think that you have to continue to do that. There's plenty of ideas, and some of them are small, but that's okay. That's good. We just heard from other presenters that it's a whole bunch of small ideas that make a difference together. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, take care.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Glass. Appreciate your submission today and for being here. So that's it for our delegations. So just want to thank everyone who did come today on our Zoom to provide comments and support, as well as, again, the folks I mentioned before that have previously submitted correspondence to us. Very much appreciated. Not just you coming here and speaking in support, but also the offer of collaboration and different kinds of support, like actual meaningful cooperation with us to help us move this forward. Because like we said multiple times, and like many of you said, this is not something that the city does on its own. This has to be done with multiple groups pulling in the same direction. I know we had one email I just got this morning from someone who had said that, asking the federal government for this much money for such a small population, what's the point? Okay. Like, I don't even have a response. The notion was just that why would you bother asking for any money, because they're not going to give it to you, because it's just too much. It's just too much for the cost. And it's an interesting argument, especially from someone who is a noted opponent of landfills, because in reality, a lot of the steps that we take, a lot of the things that are in the climate change master plan are a part of this, go through every department at the city. They impact the transportation master plan, the solid waste master plan, the official plan. It's all there. It's all embedded in the other plans that we're currently developing, we're currently working on, to make sure that this is something that kind of infiltrates everywhere and has an impact everywhere, including on ensuring we don't create new landfills. But just some perspectives are fascinating. So we'll move now to questions and comments from members of the committee and other councillors, of course. I know Councillor Hart has joined us this morning, which we appreciate. Councillor Dudas, of course, we heard from Councillor Kavanaugh. Councillor Fleury is here, who aren't on the committee but have joined us today. So really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us as well. So we'll go ahead, we'll start. And Councillor Menard is the first one up.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. And I just have a fairly simple question, and in the words of Jed Bartlett, what's next? What are we doing to advance the next steps here? And if you could just succinctly let us know. I understand we're going to each standing committee as a project's developed, and that standing committee, based on its authority, will consider these projects, of these 20 projects. But there's some urgency in terms of our own GHG reduction targets by 2025 to see a 43% reduction. And so that's 5 years away. So how are we accelerating these projects to the team, staff team? and what are the next steps that you see, critical steps and timeline? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for the question. Well, the good news is that, as was pointed out by some of the speakers today, we are at a critical point to move into implementation. And as we heard from the speakers, we've got partners in order to do that. And not only are the partners our external partners, many of which we receive letters of support from, but also the very robust internal city team that we have with us today. So what's next? Implementation. And the good news is that we are well on our way in some of these cases. We will continue to do the work of embedding climate considerations through the key plans, policies, and projects which the corporation is bringing forward. We will continue to partner with external partners like some of those here today by providing letters of support, by providing information, by providing technical advice where possible. And of course, we will work with them on both the community-led projects or the ones where the city could benefit from their technical expertise. So the good news is the next steps is really kind of flipping the switch to the focus on implementation and continuing the good work and the foundations that we have established through this project.
Okay, thank you for that. This work's very important. Thank you for what you've done to advance this file. There's a lot that can be gained by the city here, and those projects you've identified. I was asking people to identify gaps. There's not many in those 20 projects you've identified. I think those are the right ones. We picked the right ones. So, you know, we do need to move now, and just appreciate all your work on this. I'll hand it back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. So we're going to be, technically Riley is next, but Councillor Harder is with us today and she is only on the call for a little bit. So I'm going to let her go next. Also, she's been here longer. So Riley, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Harder.
Yeah, I'm kind of my own ecology with the being the oldest person by a long shot on council. And I mean a long shot. We've even had kind of like tests about that over the years. Eli being one of them. Listen, I think this is great. I'm here today. I have an appointment with our newest councillor in 5 minutes, and that's why I appreciate you letting me go next. I think this is really, really important work. And I don't think that all of you, and definitely people in this city, are aware of some of the other things that are going on that are absolutely not just trend setting, but certainly unique. And I would cite, for example, a tour of a plant that the mayor and I took on Boris O'Kane last Friday. It's called ABIC, and it's going to be remarkable in the development industry. So right now, for example, building a single house produces about 2 20-foot dumpsters that we take to West Carleton. Of course, you know, we have our own trail road, but that's not the stuff that goes there. This will change that. Instead of that, there will be 1 green garbage bag or 1 black garbage bag. That is unique, and it's just here in Ottawa in North America. The fight that Chair Moffat and I have been putting forward to fight for Barnsdale interchange will be game-changing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Just imagine having every residential waste garbage truck in the city that goes to Trail Road being able to stay on the 400 series highway and go off the ramp and turn immediately right into Trail Road, because that's the location of it, and there's already an overpass. I could go on and on because I've been on Hydro Ottawa for about 11 years, and they are award-winning in their conservation and in their initiatives. And I think that we should be learning more and working more with Enveri, for example. But I'll leave it for that today. I would love to come back and do a presentation on some of those things, and including what we're doing at our smart farm in the north, like across the street from Barrhaven on the NCC fields. It is remarkable, and we're doing it in a pan-Canadian approach. So if you have time in subsequent meetings, let me know, and I'll be happy to come back for those purposes, because I think, you know, we've got to celebrate the things that we're doing that aren't costing us a lot of money, but are going to have a significant impact. So thanks very much for letting me speak, and thanks everybody for today.
Thank you, Councillor Harder. I'd be happy to have you on a future agenda. I could even hold a special meeting just for you. No, okay, she said no.
Not that special.
Okay, fair enough. No, I appreciate that. I think, the comments about Barnsdale are important as well, because it's not just, we heard Rob speak about widening roads and what that does. And, are we making the most out of our existing infrastructure? Are there tweaks that we can make to our existing infrastructure to make them better, to take pressure off of other roads that would reduce the need for those large widening projects? Prince of Wales has been one for years. I've kind of, pushed for and said we need it. But the more I think about it, the more I realize that are there other opportunities? We need other road connections rather than enlarging the ones we already have. And certainly through the pandemic and the shift in people's work habits, the pressure's off those roads. And, can we maintain that reduction in pressure? Because if we maintain that itself is a game changer in terms of what we're talking about for future investment into our roads, and making sure that we're prioritizing the projects that we desperately need for 24 hours a day, and not just for the 3 hours of peak traffic a day. So no, good comments, and I appreciate that. So Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to you. Thank you to staff for their presentation today, but for their years of work getting us to this place. I think the first group of local environmentalists I met with happened to be Angela and other Ottawa South residents. So it's funny 6 years later seeing this come together and on some working groups last term of council, where quite frankly there was frustration expressed by the lack of progress. So we've certainly moved forward, and very happy to see this. The cost of not doing this is far greater than the cost that we see outlined in the report. It's not just a financial cost, it's sort of long-term health and social costs that our communities will see by ignoring the real threats of climate change. And inaction really cannot be even a consideration. We must do what we can. The real change is going to be made by cities, municipalities across the planet, that we have a great ability to affect change, and we have to demonstrate that we're ready to act. So it absolutely is a bold, ambitious plan. A few questions, Mr. Chair, and I want to repeat them because I think they're very important to help the public better understand this project. And one is, I'll ask it exactly as I did at the briefing, and that is the independent analysis that has been done, that has been contributed all along during this project, to make sure that what's before us is reasonable, it's achievable, that we're living in reality. Certainly a lot of critics have criticized this plan as being not realistic, not achievable. So I would like staff to list the independent analysis that's been done. So I'll just yield the floor at this point.
Thank you for the question. As we discussed at the technical briefing, we have worked with technical experts from the beginning of this process. So starting in 2015, we established a series of working groups. We established those working groups to affect the major areas where we know our emissions come from. And we worked with those working groups over the last number of years to do a series of technical pathway studies, which described both where the emissions came from and some of the opportunities that we should be looking at in order to meet council's targets. Separate from that, we've worked with a sounding board that included not only technical experts, but also community representatives, some of which are either here today or who have provided letters of support. That sounding board consisted of over 200 individuals representing almost 90 organizations in Ottawa. And again, it brought both a technical level of expertise as well as a level of expertise on the community side of things. For example, we worked with folks in the building sector. Building and transportation make up the significant portion of where our emissions come from. So in the building sector, we worked with folks in the development industry, in the architect industry. We worked with community organizations like EnviroCenter, who has done countless audits and supported many residential retrofits. Worked with organizations like Hydro Ottawa and Envari on understanding where some of the opportunities may be, not only at residential levels, but also at a commercial level. On the transportation side of things, obviously we've worked with our colleagues in transportation services, both the transit team as well as the transportation planning team. We've worked with federal agencies like NRCan, where we've applied for funding or sought their expertise on a range of topics. We've worked with community organizations like the Electric Vehicle Council of Ottawa and Virtue Car or now Communoto for different perspectives there. So I could go on with other examples like that, but it gives a flavor of the type of organizations that we have worked with. Separate from that, after the technical briefing, we went back to some colleagues across the country because the consultants that we work with have worked with a number of other major cities. And Edmonton, who used the same consultants as us, hired a consultant and did do an independent third-party review of the work that our consultants, SSG, did, and the third-party consultants agreed with the work. So I think it's fair to say that similar work done by this consultant in other major Canadian cities was vetted by a third-party consultant and found to be acceptable, as well as technical input provided through a range of stakeholders throughout the last 5 years. And all of it rolled up into the model, the energy and emissions model and the financial model, which has been presented as part of this package. The model itself has been developed based on a global model by the World Resources Institute with several partners. So it's a global protocol for this kind of work. And those technical experts, either our internal partners or our external partners, provided local input where possible to improve the assumptions, the best practice research, or the academic research that was used as the foundation.
Can you describe what will happen at the 1-year mark and 5-year mark as far as ongoing analysis, adjustments, reporting back to this committee, the oversight this committee has going forward? Can you just provide some assurances what's going to happen?
Absolutely. Well, energy evolution is one of 8 priorities outlined in Ottawa's Climate Change Master Plan. Under the Climate Change Master Plan, we have committed to doing annual reports on each of the 8 priorities. So we will come back and do an annual report on energy evolution and the status of those 20 projects, how it's moving forward. Separate from that, to gauge the progress that we're making on how we're tracking towards our targets, we will bring forward the annual community and corporate greenhouse gas emission inventories as part of that annual report. Council approved that Climate Change Master Plan in January, and we aim to bring forward the first annual report and those corporate and community greenhouse gas inventories this December. So we will be back in front of you by the end of the year to provide an update on the other priorities. We have also committed through this staff report and the strategy to rerun the model in 5 years. And in the model, we identify some of the gaps which have been identified earlier today. Rob Barnes, for instance, spoke about the gap related to embodied carbon, and we have ourselves identified that as a gap, something to be considered when we rerun that model in 5 years. And to our colleagues across the corporation who are working on the official plan and supporting master plans, we have committed that if it would be helpful, we would also use the model where possible to run either scenarios if they're trying to evaluate the options which they're considering, and also to include them in potential training so that we ourselves can manipulate the model and not have to go back to our consultants in those shorter periods of time.
We, or at least I did, received an email the other day focusing on heat supply and economic opportunities for the city in this regard. And the, I'll just say letter writer was critical that the city's plan is short on heat supply. Can you comment on this, please?
Well, what I would say is that one of the 20 projects, we do identify community heating strategy as a core area for us to consider over the next 5 years. The issue that you identify is related to heating using biomass. So typically using, as an example, a type of wood to create heat. We have steered away from that intentionally. We had conversations, and our consultants had conversations about biomass through the technical pathway studies. And the individual that you identified has been involved in this process since the beginning. So a combination of recommendations from our consultants based on best science, international best practices, and academic research suggests that we should not consider biomass because it's not necessarily carbon neutral. So our consultants made that recommendation, we accepted it. We also left it out because carbon sequestration is part of the climate change master plan. It's another of the 8 priorities which has been identified. And also in conversation with potential partners in the city, like PSPC through the federal government, we found that they were moving away from biomass because of concerns related to carbon neutrality. And so a combination of global science, best practices, consultant recommendations, and local context left us to leave biomass out. Now that said, given that we have community heating as one of our 20 projects, we will be looking at a range of options. And although we've proposed these 20 projects over the next 5 years, we are certainly not married to them as they are currently written. They will be further developed and refined as the process continues.
One last question, and then I'll yield the floor. Mr. Chair, I don't want to put you on the spot, but this is a major strategy. We have a council rep on the FCM. I am your rep on AMO. We have local MPPs and MPs here that I think deserve at some point a briefing to let them know in person what our strategy is and opportunities to work with both levels of government going forward. I don't expect an answer today, but I do want to plant the seed that we need to develop some sort of outreach campaign with our colleagues provincially and federally, and think of a way how both myself and Councillor Tierney can advocate and push our strategy at AMO and FCM respectively. So I just want to plant that with you, and happy to discuss further.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. I mean, why not make an attempt with the 3 of us and whoever else is interested to set up a meeting. Obviously, virtually makes it somewhat easier with our local. We can do a separate one. We can do local MPPs and local MPs, whatever. But yeah, that's a good idea to bring that out and to present this to them with even get Jen or Andrea to be a part of that and present this. I think that would be a smart idea, especially considering this is a plan that we need them on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. Councillor Cloutier.
Thank you very much. Merci, Monsieur le Président. And Scott, thank you for your leadership on this issue, and to the Vice Chair also. And staff, thank you for your tireless work on this. It is long time. And to the community stakeholders that who spoke today and who have written to us, thank you for your advocacy and your work. And simply put, it is crystal clear to me that we need to achieve this. This is one of the most important reports we're going to consider in this term of council. But the fact is, we're making serious decisions that are going to hold future staff and future councils to commitments down the road. It sets a course of action to about 2050. And of course, as was said, the cost of not acting is unfathomable. The report calls in real dollars, in current dollars, about $30 billion, and we don't have that money in the bank. And staff, if I think on slide 11 this year, I just want to set the table, the financial table. We need to fund this for 12 years to 2032 before there is a net return on investment. And I think that was your slide 11 today, where we see the net cost, the net benefit switch. In 2026, the net cost will be $2.5 billion, and that is 6 years from now. Let's say we currently have a budget in the city of Ottawa of $4 billion, and let's say it's about $5.5 or $6 billion in 2026. I think that's the financial environment that we are setting up just in the next term of council. And as the chair said, I don't know if he said it today or in the technical briefing, and it's quite clear, we can't do it alone. We cannot do this without the federal and the provincial government at the table actively, and with other organizations, certainly not with the tax structure that we have with municipal taxes. Ms. Keller-Herzog and I believe Ms. Glass alluded to they use the word being nimble and having the capacity to take advantage of the opportunities that will come forward. And higher levels of government, I believe, will come forward with the stimulus programs to recover. And we will need to jump on those opportunities when they become available. So my question to staff is, how can we arrange our departments, affairs, staff to be able to jump on those opportunities? They'll come quickly because those provincial and federal levels of government are dealing with the political reality too, and they will want to come forward, and financial realities, and they will want to come forward with those programs. We need to be ready, and certainly cities all across Canada is where climate change action will be will have the most impact. It's where 90% of our populations live in Canada. So if staff could address how we can be ready to jump on those opportunities, to react within weeks or months when those opportunities come from the federal and the provincial government, because again, with the financial picture that I painted a little bit, and with the reality, we cannot do this alone. And we want this to succeed. And I believe that is where the rubber hits the road with respect to getting things done. Can staff comment on that?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Well, I think what we have right now is a plan before you, which positions us well to take advantage as opportunities arise. We have established relationships with our colleagues internally across the corporation so that we are well positioned to support them if and when they identify opportunities. We ourselves are monitoring and taking advantage of any opportunities that we identify. We have submitted a number of funding proposals to a range of organizations to advance this work. We have identified projects specifically for economic recovery and stimulus funding when and if available. We have established internal working groups with staff and external partners to move things forward on the project front. We've established a Tiger team of general managers, including the Chief Financial Officer, Ottawa Public Health, the Director of the City Manager's Office, and included the Mayor's Office as an optional. We have established a Climate Change Council sponsors group, which represents key committees across the corporation when climate considerations need to be embedded. And collectively, all of these efforts help us to align our priorities, identify where there are opportunities that we may be able to take advantage of, and ideally strategize about how we can move these forward so that we can leverage not only the opportunities, but the co-benefits that come with achieving climate change objectives, whether or not they're on the mitigation side, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, or on the adaptations. And we've spoken a lot about the financials, and there are clear financial benefits associated with this, but there are also health benefits, economic development benefits in terms of job creation, equity and inclusion considerations, and ideally benefits. So there's a lot of co-benefits that we want to be able to be nimble enough to take advantage of. So we feel that we have some of our key infrastructure and kind of our relationship infrastructure in place in order to be able to move this forward. But we know it won't stop there. One of the climate change master plan priorities is to establish a governance structure, a community-wide governance structure to be able to mobilize, align, and scale up Ottawa's efforts, because we know that we can't do it alone. And although the climate change resiliency team works with colleagues across the corporation to provide technical support and to advance their own projects, we also do the same for our community partners. And where they're providing or applying for funding, we provide letters of support. After today, I will be submitting 4 more letters of support to the environment and climate change funding proposal that was identified earlier. So we will be working closely with those community partners and ideally establishing a community-wide governance structure, because we know that we can't do it alone. And we know that having a way and a systemic way to coordinate conversations, align efforts, establish priorities, and identify resources to move this forward will be critical to its success.
Thank you. Thank you for that reassurance and those details. Indeed, it is the resources, it is the capability, it's the delegated authority to act and to make sure we seize those opportunities, because again, we can't do it alone. And to the chair's comments earlier today with the letter of support from the Treasury Board, I looked at it. There was no check attached. We're going to have to fill in a couple of forms before we get money from the federal government. And I want to make sure that we're that we'll get that support, that we'll get those real dollars, because again, a mere 6 years from now, there's $2.5 billion that needs to be found somewhere, somehow, to fund the initiatives.
Well, and thank you for the reminder, Councillor. I neglected to say that we have been in direct conversation with federal departments such as Infrastructure Canada about funding that may be available. We've also had conversations about resourcing and staffing with NRCan. And we are in continuous conversation with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities about the range of funding streams which we hope to apply for and have already applied for, as well as the Ministry of Energy at the provincial level.
Noted. Again, thank you, staff, for your work on this. I will absolutely be supporting the report. Thank you, Chair. Merci.
Thank you. I know, I think just on the cost, I mean, I mentioned earlier, but the skeptics out there say it's too much. A plan like this isn't going to get more affordable the longer we wait. If we hold off a term or two and just do it then, 57 isn't going down. It's only going to go up. The need to invest and to find savings and be more efficient is today. And that's what we're here for today. So, I think it's important to have that perspective. So we will move on now to Councillor McKenney, my favorite Somerset Ward councillor.
I'm going to tell Diane Holmes you said that.
Well, current, my favorite current.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Thank you for this. I appreciate the immense amount of work that went into this. It was a lot just to read it, let alone develop it and think it through. So thank you to everyone who was involved. It really is something. I've now printed it off, and it's going to get dog-eared over the years, and we can continue to go back to it and think about it on committee. That's the brilliance of this document. It's going to come with me tomorrow to Transit Commission. And it's, when we talk about electrifying our bus fleet, because I don't think we're doing that quite quick enough, but it's a lens, and it's not just a lens, it's actually a document with measurements that we can use everywhere we go now. So thank you for that. Just one comment and one question, I think on transportation, just because it's really is our second largest contributing sector to emissions. And you know, and I know we're going to look at this through the TMP going forward, but the plan seems to just commit more thought or more action towards electrifying vehicles. So continues to focus on you know, transportation via vehicles. And when we look at the targets for active transportation mode share, I think it's looking back 21% by 2030, and you know, most by 2046, and 2030 really is around the corner. Like, I hate using that term now that it's being used down south, but it's not far off. So you know, I look at that and I think about, you know, some of the conversations we had over this past few months around, you know, widening sidewalks during COVID, taking out parking lanes, and I really hope that, you know, we're going to consider those targets when we're having those discussions again, because they're very important. If we don't give people space to walk, if we don't start widening the public space for people, those targets are going to be impossible to meet. Not almost, they will be. So I just wanted to just make that comment. And then my question is, and you can respond to that if you like, but and I know that will be a conversation going forward in the TMP, which I very much look forward to. My question is this, and it's the only, when we look at the modeling, the energy emissions and finance modeling, you said in your presentation that you would be reporting back on that every 5 years. So that would bring us to 2025. And I just wonder if, when we look at the short-term targets in community GHGs, we want to see a reduction of 43% by 2025. Is that correct? And then 30% for corporate by 2025. And I just wonder if we're coming back only in 5 years with the modeling. What happens if we're not there? What happens if we're far off? What happens to everything going forward?
Thank you. I'll address the first one first, around the transportation side of things. So we've been very blessed that throughout the process, our colleagues in transportation services have been very involved, and they've been involved in a range of ways since the beginning of the project. Perhaps most notably is that much of the foundational data to develop the model itself was provided directly by the transportation services team. The model itself is a geographically based model, and it's on transportation zones. So we worked very closely with the transportation team in the very foundational pieces. They of course participated through working groups, technical working groups over the development of the pathways, and they have provided a significant amount of input into those 20 projects which have been identified. Beyond that, the Transportation Master Plan and notably the Solid Waste Master Plan as well have of course taken note that there are very, very aggressive metrics within the model. And based on a number of conversations with staff leading those solid waste and transportation master plans, both the TMP and Solid Waste Master Plan have committed to evaluating a scenario in line with energy evolution. Now, we identified in the presentation that there's a range of risks that in order to achieve those, and that's really the work of the supporting master plans, such as the Transportation Master Plan and the Solid Waste Master Plan, among others. We do have colleagues here from Transportation Services, if there's anything else they'd like to add, or if I've missed anything. On the second point, on your concern is a good one. We set very, very aggressive targets in the short term. And I want to assure you that we are coming back on an annual basis to report on our community and corporate greenhouse gas emissions. So we'll see year by year how we're tracking to those 5-year targets. we won't have to rerun the model in 5 years. We won't have to rerun the model in 5 years to see if we're on track. I think the important part in 5 years is we're actually going to want to see in 5 years that after we have made it through these other very important documents, such as the official plan and master plan, that our business as planned model changes. That we want to see that that curve is coming down, as well as the corporate and community GHG emission inventories that we will bring forward on an annual basis.
Okay. Okay, that certainly answers my concerns about, you know, making sure that we're tracking. So thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Now moving to Councillor King. And by the way, the future is up to you. You're one of the newest ones here. It's really you and Councillor Kitts. It's all on you.
Well, at least I'm not the only newbie chair. I there's a new newbie, which is good.
I know you're like old hat now. You know? Go ahead.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity really to thank staff for the great work that they've done. Obviously, climate change is the most serious challenge really confronting us as a city, as a society. In all elements. So I'm very gratified by the work that has been undertaken. I did note in the report that there was a section that dealt with equity and inclusion. And so I do have some questions to staff around that concerning the role of everyone, you know, playing a part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It has been noted, of course, that issues of poverty, affordable housing, and climate change are interrelated and are challenges that are wrapped up with this process. And I know that the report identified the potential use of a tool, of an energy poverty and equity explorer tool, to really understand the equity and inclusion challenges around implementing climate programs like the one that's proposed. So I was just wondering if staff could comment on the potential application of the tool, because there wasn't much comment about that. There was a comment about the existence of a tool, but not its specific application to this strategy.
Thank you for the question. The tool that you're referring to, the equity and the energy and equity tool, was developed as a partnership across the country. We work with 17 large and leading municipalities across Canada through a network called CUSP, or the Canadian Urban Sustainability Practitioners Network. And we meet every 2 weeks with that network. Collectively across the country, we have concerns that there are those who may be left behind in a transition to a low carbon future. And one of the priorities that CUSP has identified is equity and inclusion. And so as a way to understand where there are equity and energy poverty considerations, a national tool was developed that looks at very detailed data across a range of considerations: financial, household income, ratio between spending and income, race, language, education levels, gender, housing typology, renters, owners versus the typology of the housing itself. And that's been done across the country. So any postal code in Canada could go and find out information for their area. We piloted with CUSP a more detailed version of that, where we looked explicitly at what kind of equity and energy poverty considerations do we as staff need to take into consideration as we develop those 20 projects. So we have the foundation of a report that outlines those considerations for us. And after this report goes forward and we continue our work in each of these 20 projects, we have data to look at and figure out where do we need to consider this data in the development of these projects. Beyond that, we recognize that we have to have more conversations with people with lived experience in these equity and inclusion or vulnerable communities. And one of the letters of support I will be providing later today is to the Ottawa Community Foundation and to the Ottawa Climate Action Fund. We heard from the Executive Director, Steve Winkleman, who is proposing to actually build some of that social infrastructure to catalyze more conversations about this issue specifically. So we recognize there's a lot of work to be done. We have some data which can help inform it, and we're hopeful about some of the social infrastructure that partners, not only across the corporation, but in the community can help establish to move this important aspect forward.
That's excellent. I appreciate that. And I hope that the work of the new anti-racism secretariat will also factor in. I do know that the new anti-racism office will be undertaking some public consultation engagements or action planning in November around multiple issues. And obviously the environment is a major consideration. So I would hope that there would be some work undertaken there so that there is a tie-in with that office. The other question. Sorry about that. Another I suppose question I had really emerged from some of the discussion that emerged from Ecology Ottawa around the idea of factoring embodied carbon into our analysis. Can staff really speak to how that might be undertaken, if any thought has been given to that, and what that might look like as we move forward?
Thank you. We have identified that embodied carbon is a limit in the model right now. The direction that we were given as part of this exercise from Council is to establish how we are going to meet the targets which Council set. And we relied on global protocol through our consultants, through input, as we developed the model itself. One of the areas which is still an emerging area is the protocols and is the research around embodied carbon. And so I appreciate both the question earlier as well as Ecology's, Ottawa's response that they would do some digging into more about that. That's an ongoing question. And we've had discussions with some organizations, including Infrastructure Canada, and they've let us know that through their climate lens, it's also something that they're struggling with. Infrastructure Canada does a climate lens on significant projects, those over $10 million, and you have to provide information, and they themselves exclude embodied carbon. They are looking to develop some local information, specifically with the NCC for the regional context, and they're also looking at what kind of additional guidance they can provide across the country about embodied carbon as a general area. We are aware that sort of rough numbers from our consultants is that about 25% more emissions may be kind of in play if we were looking at embodied carbon. And it's something that isn't precluded from us considering as we go through the development of projects for the efficiencies around responding to the direction that Council gave us to come back on how we're going to meet our targets and to stick within sort of best practices related to the modeling work that has been done. We have left it out for now. We will consider it at the 5-year mark when we do the full rerun of the model. One of the considerations, a core consideration for us at that time, will be that it's very detailed and therefore very expensive to calculate. So we may have some trade-offs as we come into that 5-year review around what the priorities are and how we scope it accordingly.
Thank you for that. I think that their question was very important because I think it's important for us to consider the full life cycle costs of carbon and its full costs, not just the end use. So that's important. I do have one final question, and it does revolve around the creation of clean industries in Ottawa. I know that it was pointed out that there are a number of companies that might be able to develop synergies based on this plan in terms of moving it forward. I was just wondering if you could speak to the connections with industry, especially clean energy industry in Ottawa, and how they might be a benefit to this plan.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Okay. Pass that to me. Thank you. I'm going to start, and then we'll ask Dawn Herwire as the Director of the Economic Development and Long Range Planning branch to weigh in. So your question was related to clean industry and sort of what role could that play? And I would say that generally speaking, we know that clean industry or green tech is on the rise globally. We know that it's on the rise nationally, and we are heartened to see that in some cases it is also on the rise locally. So we see that there are certainly lots of potential, and Ottawa has a tremendous environment in which these kinds of technologies, clean industries and green tech can thrive. And so we are obviously looking for partners in a range of areas, because climate change touches so many different aspects. The ones, of course, we often think of are related to renewable energy, but also as we look forward, we are going to need more technology through the waste sector, through our transportation sectors. Certainly high-tech sector that we want to be able to build on, and the notion that has had some traction with council is the notion of the smart city. And there are tons of opportunities, and Councillor King, we've had some conversations in the past where you've identified some opportunities for smart buildings and smart transportation. We heard from Councillor Harder earlier today, alluding to some of the smart farm and some opportunities there. So we certainly know that it's a burgeoning and growing and important industry for us to capitalize on. And we look forward to working with partners and having those opportunities identified for us so that we may be able to take advantage if and when the opportunities arise. I'll just pause and ask if Dawn Herwire wanted to add anything from an economic development perspective.
Thanks, Andrea. No, I think that's a very thorough response. We heard from Councillor Harder on one thing going on in terms of the ABIC facility. The smart farm is obviously key as we shift in terms of smart agriculture. One other program I could see applying is we have an innovation pilot program in our economic development group that takes in ideas from the private sector. And this year we shifted our focus to things that would help us in terms of the COVID situation. But I could see an expanded program there in terms of technology and things that would help the city respond in terms of that emerging technology. So lots of opportunities.
Well, thank you for that comment. Those are all my questions, but I primarily wanted to focus on the idea that this should be a virtuous cycle as well. There's a lot of spending that needs and investment that needs to be undertaken, but ideally we want to ensure that that's also growing green industry, and that's growing green industry in our city. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor King. I'm just going to take a second here. Can I get members of committee to turn their cameras on? I like to be able to see quorum. I know Councillor DeRuse had to step away for 10 minutes. So that's good. Perfect. Now with that, Councillor Menard, I'm going to step away for a second.
Okay.
You have the con. Councillor Teresa Kavanaugh's up next. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor Kavanaugh. And actually, Councillor Kavanaugh, you asked a question. I believe you spoke earlier, but so you may not be there. Are you there, Councillor Kavanaugh?
I am. I spoke earlier to some of our guests, but not to.
Okay, you're on the list officially. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I appreciate all the work that's been done. This is, I'm very, very happy that we're moving this direction. And much has been asked by previous councillors, and I appreciate their questions. I guess I just want to ensure that we continue to work with communities. I was very encouraged to hear from Ms. Glass, and also just in terms of CAFE and just the idea that there are people in the community who really want to do things. And I appreciate the intervention from our economic development team in terms of, listening to new ideas, because I do get those. And I want to be assured that we have a place to talk about them with our team, because that I think that's where the great ideas come from. It is from from residents gathering together and thinking about things, about what we can do better. So I just want to ask about what the process is, so that we can encourage people out there to say, you can go to your counselor, you can, we'll have a network to talk about your ideas of what we can do in the community. Because once we have buy-in from the residents, and I see that's one of the risks that we have is not having buy-in from residents. But if they own a piece of it, if they feel like it's something that they're doing in their community, we'll definitely get more feedback and interest in the big projects as well. So I just wanted to ask if we've how we can go about harvesting those ideas out there.
Councillor, I'll start, and I'll speak more generally about sort of the climate change file, and then I'll look to Don to see if he wants to add anything specific on the ideas about economic development. So we agree, of course, that there have been already many great ideas that have come from our technical working groups, our sounding board members, members of staff, both those who have been directly involved in the projects, as well as those who have reached out after having done public or staff internal presentations. So we want to continue to hear those ideas from all those folks. As part of the project package, which is before you, there is an outreach and education package included. And we expect and hope to work with partners like some of those who spoke today in order to be able to reach broader audiences. We are blessed on our team not only to have technical experts, but we also have a communication and outreach staff who is dedicated to this and who has already built a climate change newsletter following of, I think we're at about 3,000 followers. We have tremendous support from our public information and media relations staff and from Ottawa Public Health, who also want to share and promote these messages, not just about collecting ideas, but perhaps even more importantly about how individuals can take action, because that's something we've heard many times, that because the plan itself covers so many aspects and it's so technical in some cases and very detailed in others, that people want to know what to do. And so as we make this switch into an implementation focus going forward, part of our efforts will be dedicated to ensuring that not only can we continue to collect ideas as the projects are developed, but that we can maintain focus on what individuals, organizations, and businesses themselves can do to help align with and advance the objectives or projects outlined in this package.
Great, thank you. So we'll keep them coming. I just wanted to get your comments about the new Blue Box program that the province is putting forward. Does this fit in to what we're doing here?
Well, we are again blessed to have a roster of staff on the call. We have staff here from the Solid Waste Master Plan. So Nicole, could I pass that question over to you?
Sure. Thank you very much, Councillor. So in terms of the impacts of the city's transition or the provincial transition of the Blue Box to individual producer responsibility, it's something that is being contemplated within the context of the Solid Waste Master Plan and understanding what the potential climate impacts will be associated with that. So we will be further exploring that through the Solid Waste Master Planning process.
So we'll hear more analysis soon, I guess, once we get more details then.
Absolutely, yes, Councillor.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your looking after the committee in my stead, Councillor Menard. I know it was tough work.
Very tough.
All right, thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Eglai is the last on my list, unless somebody wants to jump on and ask more stuff. Go ahead, Councillor Eglai.
Thank you, Councillor Moffat. So first, I like a lot of my colleagues, want to thank staff. This was a major undertaking, and you know, the product you come forward with is progressive and substantive, action item oriented type approach. So that's appreciated. I have a question. I did a little research online actually while I was waiting, so I sort of know the answer. But I have a question that I think is maybe a burning question for many of my colleagues or the public listening. You've made reference several times to the Tiger team, and that sounds really cool to have a Tiger team out there and very aggressive and sleek and efficient and everything else. But maybe you can explain exactly what a Tiger team is for those who may be unfamiliar with the term, and what that team will be doing as part of the overall project.
Thank you. Well, we certainly did not name it. It was a name that started in an earlier phase of energy evolution. So over the course of the project, there have been 2 separate Tiger teams established. The concept of the Tiger team is that it engages the most senior management levels in order to align, coordinate, and ideally advance the priorities which have been established. And so having a forum in which we can bring cross-departmental and cross-corporate considerations to the most senior management team in order to get their input, figure out how to position it, identify opportunities where we may be able to, and also to address concerns that they have, will help us, we hope and we think, move this through in a more systematic way through the corporation. So we'll be bringing questions for the climate change master plan, not just energy evolution, but questions related to both the on the mitigation side as well as the adaptation side to the climate change Tiger team, so that we can advance the climate change master plan and the 8 priorities within it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. My second question has to do with me kind of putting on my chair of Ottawa Public Health. We've talked a lot this morning about, you know, potential savings down the road. It sounds like it's a big financial ticket, but when you look at it in the long range and what it's going to produce and the money it's going to save, I think it's pretty obvious to everybody on this committee that, you know, improve our environment and we're going to improve our health for the citizens of Ottawa. And I'm just wondering if you can talk to that a little bit in how you are going to track the outputs, if you will, of the plan going forward, and what sort of goalposts you're going to look at to be able to say to us that you are achieving positive results out of this. And in particular, I guess, as I say, I'm interested in seeing how you're tracking, or do you have a plan to track what the positive health outcomes are going to be of the various initiatives that you've set out for us today?
It's an insightful question, Councillor, and we agree that the health considerations associated with climate change are critical, and of course they're a major driver for why we need to make change in this file. It's so important to us that we are actually seconded 50% staff from Ottawa Public Health to be a member of the climate change and resiliency team, and that has really helped, even in this time of the pandemic, solidify where our messaging and where our opportunities may align. So the question, do we have a plan to sort of evaluate, I guess, the positive health outcomes? I think we'll continue to work with our colleagues in Ottawa Public Health to identify what kind of metrics they use, where we might have some opportunities to look at that. And as we're developing the projects themselves further, I think it will behoove us to think about what kind of health indicators and successes we may see. For instance, the phase out of diesel from a corporate perspective will be an important consideration in air quality. And so I think it's an insightful question, and one that we'll have to take away as we further develop the projects to go forward. not just in the in our corporate perspective, but also in a community-wide perspective, because combustion of anything, reductions in combustion of anything will also lead to improvements in air quality. So something for us to give some thought to as we continue.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And the reason I raise it is because, you know, and the chair alluded to this in his earlier comments, there's a bit of a sticker shock to this plan when you look at it initially. And I think one of the ways to justify the proposed expenses over the next number of years is to focus on and explain some of those non-financial benefits, those benefits that are going to impact each and every one of us in the city. And the most logical one that comes to mind to me is, you know, the air is cleaner to breathe if it's easier to be outside, if there's promotion of different ways to get around the city. All those things are going to impact positively on people's health. So I appreciate you may not have a plan, but to sort of come back and speak to those things directly, I equally appreciate that you're going to take that away and have a look at that and find a way to do it, because I think it's a good way to sell the plan to those who may be skeptical out there about an investment of this size, and you know, what are we getting for it? And I think if one of the things we can say, you're getting better health and more sustainable health conditions, I think that would be a really good way to get that message across to the community as a whole. So just leave that with you, and maybe we can talk about it more offline. But I think it's a good thing to track and a good thing to use as an indicator of the success of the plan. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that and everyone's comments and questions. Appreciate staff's time. I know on the Tiger team, I was secretly lobbying for Ralston to be named the chair of the Tiger team, just so I could refer to him as the Tiger King. All right. So on the item, and I'll just go right through all of the recommendations. So at the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management, recommend that Council, 1, receive the final report for energy evolution, Ottawa's community energy transition strategy, and supporting documents attached as document 1 through document 9 and summarized in this report. 2, receive the list of projects identified as documents 7 and 8 to be more developed by staff and brought forward before Standing Committee and Council for approval where required. 3, direct staff leading new or updates to city plans, strategies, and policies to take into consideration the energy emissions model and the city's greenhouse gas reduction targets in the development of such plans, strategies, and policies. And 4, approve that the 2019 Hydro Ottawa dividend surplus of $2.6 million be used to fund the proposed spending plan attached as document 11 and summarized in this report. On that item. Carried. Yes.
Carried.
Emphatic yes from Councillor Couche. Thank you so much. Appreciate, again, your time today. Appreciate everyone that came out to speak today. And obviously this won't be the end of it. We'll talk about this more. I know it won't be the biggest story in the news today, but it's an important step in the right direction for the city of Ottawa and our community as a whole. Oh, as amended. Carried as amended.
As amended.
Otherwise, this Wachowski over there will just give me the gears. Okay. In-camera items, there are none. Information previously distributed. A update on the new Island Water Purification Plant project. You would have all received that. Notices of motion. We have 2 that I know of from Councillor Menard, both related to the discussion today.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. It's timely, and both have been through some staff process. I really want to thank staff for going through and helping with some edits to these. Do you want me to read them both out in full, or just the be it resolved that?
Yeah, just the resolution. Just the resolution's fine.
Yeah. So this one is on the climate change master plan, energy evolution, Ottawa's community energy transition strategy final report, and it's funding cost-effective energy evolution projects. And therefore be it resolved that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend to the Finance and Economic Development Committee that the next long-range financial plans consider the affordability of raising the debt limit for projects in energy evolution that either generate income or savings to the city. And be it further resolved that the climate change team participate in the development of the long-range financial plans to help identify new funding mechanisms for energy evolution initiatives required by the corporation as per the climate change master plan to meet the 100% emissions reduction scenario. That's a notice of motion there. The second one, Chair, relates to fossil fuels and sustainable assets. We've not done very well financially with these investments of late. And the therefore be it resolved clauses are that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend that Council direct Treasury staff to report back to FEDCO at the end of Q2 in 2021 with a summary of barriers to achieving prudent investor status, how they are addressing those barriers, and a summary of actions taken to date. And be it further resolved that the Standing Committee on Environmental Protection, Water and Waste Management recommend to Finance and Economic Development Committee that once Council approves a direction to implement prudent investor standards for the City of Ottawa, that staff evaluate the prudence of divesting of fossil fuels as input to the development of the investment strategy that will need to be approved by Council. The scope of this review will include an assessment of the following: no new purchase of stocks or mutual funds with coal, oil, and gas companies, specifically excluding any new investment in the 200 largest publicly traded fossil fuel companies, and sell-off of fossil fuel holdings from these same companies over the next 5 years. So there'll be an analysis done. I'll leave it back to you, Chair.
Thank you for that. So that'll be on our next committee agenda. So we'll discuss that in detail then. So thank you for that. Let me get back to my agenda here. All right. So no, I haven't received any further notices of motion from anyone else. Inquiries.
I have one.
Oh, excellent. Go ahead.
Chair, would staff please inform the committee plans to host hazardous waste depots in 2021, including locations better dispersed across the city, and provide opportunities for walk-up drop-offs?
Thanks. Did you share that with Chris? Does he have that?
I will type it up.
Okay. Oh yes, I see it written, handwritten. But yeah, on that, I mean, just on this year.
I know.
Okay. Yeah. Well, just even for the public's sake, we tried to come up with solutions to better serve the entire city. We didn't. I mean, our three extended household hazardous waste depots were at Conroy, Carp Road, and now Barhaven starting tomorrow until the 25th from 8 to 4 every day. And it's just because we did the extended ones, and normally our preferred downtown area location would be Tunney's Pasture, but we can't get it. We can't do it for 5 straight days. And we also need to have a secure site. So hopefully, which we couldn't have a secure site at Tunney's overnight and whatnot. So where we can clearly at the city works yards where we have snow dump facilities.
Chair, I appreciate that we are doing something rather than nothing this year. But as you know, there's a lot of questions about next year, and that's why I'm filing.
Oh, I know. I agree. That's why I was getting to just that next year. I know I've talked to staff, and we want to make sure that we take a bit more time this year. We were kind of trying to come up with the best solution given the time restraints. But hopefully next year we can come up with some better options and make sure that we're providing that service, which is an important service, to all residents who can access it, because I fully aware that the 3 sites aren't fully accessible for everyone in the city. So thanks for that inquiry, and it'll be good to get that on the agenda with a response. No further inquiries. I don't see other business. None. Adjournments. Assume one of you folks is moving to adjournment. So on adjournment, is that carried?
Carried.
Great, thanks. So our next meeting will be Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. And of course, the report from today will go to Council on the 28th of this month. So look forward to that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.